Television. And this is Dominic. And this is Milo.
Hello.
And this is my week 6 video. And week 6's topic is coming out. And Milo is going to interview me.
Yes. I've got some very important questions. Say, Dominic, how did you first come out to yourself?
I sort of knew at age 14, but I didn't know what transsexuality or anything was yet. So I didn't come out to myself at that point. I just sort of dabbled in a little bit of male gender expression, but people started to laugh and tell me that I wasn't being girly enough. So I stopped that and went into about 8 years of overcompensation.
So after that, how did you, during your feminine stage, big air quotes, when did you start thinking about transition again?
Basically, I guess my watershed moment was like in 2004 at Vancouver Pride. I was walking around at Vancouver Pride and I was seeing all these shirtless guys, and I just kind of had this light bulb come on in my head, like started to feel, I guess I didn't know the word for it at the time, but gender dysphoric about my chest and stuff, and I felt like I was one of them, but I didn't know how to explain that to anybody who was around me. Because I mean, how do you explain? I feel like one of them.
Yeah.
And they look at you and they go, but you're one of those.
Yeah.
And I had these giant boobs and everything, and all I really wanted to do was just rip my shirt off and go and join them.
Yeah.
Then I realized if I did so, I mean, I've got all this makeup, my hair is incredibly long, I have hips, I have a butt, I have really big boobs, so yeah, there was just no way to do that, but that's when I figured it out.
So when did you discover the word transgender and apply it to yourself?
I think, I met somebody who was trans, and they sort of explained a little bit to me. And at the time I was a little bit transphobic and I didn't understand, and I'd say things to her like, why don't you just go back to being a man, etc. Because I didn't get it, you know.
Yeah.
And you know how people who are sort of closeted homosexual tend to be a little bit on the homophobic side?
Yes.
It was sort of like that. So, anyways, I met her and she sort of told me a little bit about it, and then one of my best friends at the time knew a trans woman who he became very good friends with online.
Yeah.
She had told him everything about, you know, transition and all the different things about it. And he did some research because that's the kind of person he is. He likes to research things. So he knew a lot about it, and he told me a lot about it. And that's how I understood and realized I was being a total dick to this girl that I had met. I started to understand, you know, more about myself, and that term actually applied to me.
And so who did you first tell that you were trans?
Him, the best friend, and he accepted me right away because he was open-minded about it.
Liberal?
Yeah, very liberal, very open-minded about it, and started calling me by my preferred name immediately, which I had already chosen, which was Dominic, and I stuck with it.
Great.
Yeah, and then I waited 2 years before I even started doing anything about transition or actually telling anybody else.
Yeah.
I did jokingly say to my mom back, and I think it was the summer of 2004, when I went to house sit for them briefly and they came back while I was still there, and I said to my mom, how would you feel about having another son? Just jokingly, and she just kind of brushed it off, like she totally thought I was just completely joking. I was half joking, but I was also half serious.
It's the way you test people. Right?
Yeah, I was testing her, and she just kind of went, stop being silly, go set the table, you know.
And so, when did you first publicly come out? Probably not to your, did you come out to friends or family first?
Friends. Yeah. 2 years after I figured out I was trans, in 2006, I started coming out to basically all my friends and stuff.
How did things go with coming out to your friends?
Actually, I was very surprised at how well it went. I basically wrote everybody one long letter, basically all my friends from Vancouver. I had moved to Alberta by that time, and I was telling everybody via like a giant letter on the internet, and people read it. They included facts and stuff, you know, and they read it and they went, okay, cool. So this is who you are, you're Dominic now, cool. They pretty much all reacted very similarly. My old friends from high school and from Vancouver back when I lived in Vancouver, they all pretty much reacted the same way, in that they were just sort of like, okay, cool, this is who you are, this is what's going to make you happy, that's good, because they all saw me go through a lot of really rough stuff when I was living as you know, when I was in my overcompensation phase. They all saw that happen, so they understood when I came out and just kind of went, that makes sense, you know, and if it makes you happy, if it makes you stop being so self-destructive, then cool, we're okay with that. Nobody really had a problem with it. And I was completely surprised. It was so effortless to come out to my old friends. The new ones, however, when I moved to Calgary, it had never been anything in Calgary but Dominic. Because when I moved there, I started living full-time, and the people there who had known me as nothing other than Dominic, they couldn't grasp the concept of female-to-male transsexual. They just thought that I was a lesbian, and it didn't matter how many times I tried to explain to them I'm trans, they didn't get it. So the people that I was friends with after I started to socially transition and live full-time and present as Dominic full-time were the ones that had a hard time grasping the concept, which is really backwards, because these people from Vancouver and people I knew from school and all that from way back, they were the ones who were like, yeah, okay, cool, yeah, this is who you are. They're the ones who accepted it 110%, and then, you know, you get these new people in my life, they do not get it. And they still don't. I find it's mostly the gay community.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like the gay men, lesbians, mostly the gay men. They associate male as who they are attracted to.
Yeah.
And since I'm not what they would typically think of as male, then I'm not male to them.
Yeah.
And so they have a hard time calling me male pronouns and this and that.
You're living in Calgary at this time, but nobody is seeming to accept you. How did you live with that? How are you handling?
Oh, I'm fine. I just want to move back to Vancouver.
Yeah. And so then obviously the big emotional one comes with coming out to your family. And I know a lot of us have emotional stories, and
yeah. So after my summer of coming out, which was basically the summer of 2006, I went to a doctor for the first time, November of 2006, and I told my doctor that I think that I'm trans, or think that I'm stuck in the wrong body, etc. This was the doctor I had had earlier on in my life too, when I was a teenager, so it was a little bit awkward coming out to the doctor. Saw me go through puberty and crap. She gave me a referral to the specialist in Edmonton that deals with gender identity stuff, basically the specialist at the gender clinic. And so got the ball rolling there, and the same day when I got home from the doctor's, I decided I was going to call my mom.
Okay. You had momentum behind you for this phone call.
Yeah.
So that phone call, tell us about it.
Oh man. So I called her and I told her I had something very important to tell her and yada yada yada, and she was probably expecting something along the lines of more drugs or another pregnancy or something.
Yeah, yeah.
She was just kind of, she braced herself, and well, I told her, and she went through probably more than 15 different emotions or states of mind within that one phone call. It was really intense, and while I was expecting some of that, I wasn't expecting quite that much. It basically ranged from everything from you were too girly as a child, there is no way that you're a boy, to yeah, I wanted to be a boy too as I was growing up, but that's a phase that you just grow out of, to this is not God's plan for you, I had a daughter, there's no such thing as transsexuality, you're possessed by Satan, you need to get help, you're sick and twisted, once you're finished this process, I don't ever want to see you again, you're doing this to hurt me, you're doing this for attention, you're doing this because somebody convinced you that you're this, Satan's got a hold of you and you need to ask Jesus for help. My mother is extremely religious, as I mentioned in my child abuse video. There was just so many things that she said during that phone call. There was one thing that really stood out, and that was, she said that one of her friends had told her very recently something along the lines of, oh Penny, your daughter has hurt you so much, the only thing she could possibly do to hurt you even more is if she had a sex change. apparently this happened just days before the phone call.
Dear.
She just acts like it's, you know, this huge thing. It's like I'm victimizing her. She was playing victim the entire phone call, or accusing me of being some bad person or something. So it was a very intense phone call. I haven't really spoke to my stepdad about the whole thing, but he pretty much agrees with everything Mom says. They're both in the same religion and all this stuff, so.
And so this was in 2006, or?
Yeah, at the end of 2006, November.
And so has your relationship progressed at all from there with your mom?
No, it really hasn't. I mean, it has and it hasn't.
Yeah.
There was a time she sort of went into denial, and I mean, I'm pretty much post everything now, right?
Yeah.
There was a time she went into denial and just sort of like didn't acknowledge it, etc. We don't speak of it anymore, really.
Yeah.
But she knows I'm finished and all that. But she has expressed fairly recently, I suppose, in the past 6 months or so, that she's convinced that I'm coming back to them someday as her, and that I'm going to sing for Jesus. And so that seems to help her sleep at night. I don't know. It really hasn't progressed much. I'm still their daughter. I'm never going to be their son. I've tried tirelessly to get them to accept me as their son, as their, to get my brothers to accept me as their brother. My brothers are my mother's children, and because of that, they also grew up Christian, and basically they think whatever she thinks. So she says it's wrong, they believe it's wrong, and so they're mad at me. I spoke to my oldest younger brother, who was about 18 at the time, back in late 2008. And I thought, because he added me to his Facebook, I thought that he was accepting of, who I was living as.
Yeah.
Of Dominic, as opposed to who I was before. And we talked on the phone, and he said something along the lines of, you're fucked up. Until you go back to being her, I won't love you, etc. It was pretty brutal. And my stepsister, who shares a father with these brothers of mine, my stepdad's kid, she seemed to accept me for a couple of years, and then around the time my brother said this stuff to me, said something along the lines of, I don't really accept you as Dominic, yada yada yada. I guess it was just
so flippantly.
Yeah.
Wow.
She just she's like, stop playing dress up. That's basically what she said to me. Quit playing dress up. And that really hurt. I mean, that all came at the same time.
Yeah.
And I just, it sucked. At first, she seemed to be totally cool with it.
Yeah.
I had her on my Facebook. We talked and stuff. She lived in Edmonton while I lived in Calgary. We hung out a couple times. She started calling me her brother, but then around the time that Tony said those things to me, back in late 2008, that's when she decided she was going to go ahead and tell me to stop playing dress up.
Wow.
So it was like she stabbed me in the back.
Yeah.
First she acts like she's okay with it, and then she turns around and, no, I'm not okay with it, by the way.
Oh.
So that was kind of a slap in the face. So anyways, my other sister, who lives in Scotland, my father's child, my half-sister, she seemed to be kind of weirded out about it at first, because, I came out to her online, and I told her about it and this and that, and she's like, what have you done, And at first she was confused, and she'd say things like, well, you'll always be my big sister. It was kind of like,
that's not very comforting.
And it isn't necessarily, but I think she was confused, and she didn't really know what to say and this and that, and I think as time went on, she matured a little bit, and now she calls me her big brother. And when she started doing this, I was really shocked. Like, I was really pleasantly surprised. I didn't think she'd ever come around, but she did, and that's pretty awesome, because I have at least one immediate family member who accepts me. Thank you. Just gonna wet the whistle a little. You wanted some too, didn't you? Your water's over here. Yeah. There you go. Alrighty. So my little sister, I just wanted to go slightly more into that just for a second. So yeah, she started off as kind of weirded out by it, but then she eventually came around and started calling me her big brother and stuff, which was really cool. And as an added bonus, she also stands up for me whenever people on my Facebook wall or whatever, because obviously she's in Scotland, we don't have direct contact in person, so anytime anyone harasses me or anything like that, either on her Facebook wall or on mine or whatever, she stands up for me. So that's pretty cool.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Then she's adamant about, you know, this is my brother, you know, kind of thing. And if people say, I didn't think you had a brother, she goes, yes, I do. So
That's so awesome.
It's pretty neat. Yeah. I didn't think she'd get to that point, but she did, and it's better to have that rather than, you know, nothing at all. So
Definitely, for sure.
I never actually did come out to my birth father because we're not in contact anyways. That's the good sister, we'll call her. That's the good sister's dad. I never did come out to him, but I'm pretty sure he knows by proxy and doesn't really care because he doesn't call me his kid anyways. So he's irrelevant. So after I'd already done my coming out tour in the summer of 2006.
Internationally.
Yes, my international coming out tour. And then, you know, the coming out to my mother in November of 2006. In the spring of 2007, when I moved to Calgary, I decided it was time to come out to my grandmother. My mom advised against this because, of course, we know mom's reaction.
Yeah.
And she thought that Nanny would react just as horribly. She didn't actually react horribly at all. But Nanny has been through so much in her life, like in those past couple years before I was about to come out to her.
Whoa, mister.
She'd already dealt with two people that were very close to her dying, etc. My grandpa and the guy that she was seeing while she was married to my grandpa. They both died within 9 months of each other. So Mom didn't want me to put Nanny through any more stress. She said, don't you dare hurt that woman, she's already been through enough.
Yeah.
But I decided, you know, I mean, I kind of communicate with my grandpa's spirit, and I felt like he was telling me that it was okay to tell Nanny.
Yeah.
So I called her up,
Yeah.
and I told her I had something very important to tell her that she might not be okay with. Something really, really big to tell her.
Okay.
And she didn't know what to expect, of course. She was thinking maybe it was drugs, maybe it was pregnancy.
Yeah.
You know, it could be anything. And she was really worried. And she's like, okay, just tell me, you know, just tell me. And I'm like, but I'm really scared that you're not going to be okay with this. And Mom told me not to tell you. And blah, blah, blah. She's like, just tell me.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'm trans, you know, and I explained it a little bit, and she goes, that's all? And I'm like, are you serious?
Yeah.
And she's like, I thought it was going to be something way worse than that. And I'm like, what do you mean worse than that? She's like, I thought you were going to tell me that you like ended up in trouble with the law or pregnant again. Hell, if you were pregnant again, I'd be really upset. But this is fine.
Yeah.
She's like, you do whatever you need to do. If this is what you need to do to be happy, then you do it. And I was like, so pleasantly surprised with that one.
It's like big weight off your chest.
Totally. I explained to her how terrified I was because Mom set me up for this whole
horrible apocalypse.
Yeah, she made it sound so apocalyptic and so end of the world, and if I told Nanny the sky was gonna fall and all the buildings would crack open, and nothing bad happened. In fact, quite the opposite. And she supported me so much. She doesn't quite understand the concept, but she calls me her grandson. She tries very hard to call me, you know, my name, and tries very hard with the pronouns and stuff, but since she's known me for 28 years, it's a little hard, but she's trying, you know, and that's all I ask for.
Yeah.
It's difficult when someone has known you that long, but she's at least trying.
Exactly.
So,
he's having an important business call.
I won't interrupt that. Does he know that the earpiece is in the wrong spot? Anyway, so yeah, that was a pleasant surprise. I did not think she would react that positively, and she ended up coming out to look after me for one of my surgeries.
Great.
For my chest surgery, actually, and She made sure I was comfortable, and even though I was stubborn and insisted on doing some things for myself,
Yeah.
she tried to do everything
Yeah.
for me and stuff. So I mean, that was pretty cool. Like, she's when I woke up from my surgery, she was there, you know, by the bed, and there's actually a video on my personal YouTube account of her there after my surgery talking to me with the camera, and I was fucking doped up. Hi, Nanny. But yeah, anyways, so there's that. And I think that, yeah, it was just a really good reaction. So I've got her and I've got my sister.
Do you want to give a little shout out of advice to anyone that might need it?
Yeah, I really do. I think I wanted to... Did we go much into how my family is now with my transition?
You talked about your mom and how she hasn't changed very much from that initial phone call.
Well, she hasn't. I mean, she's obviously still talking to me, even though I went through the whole thing already. So
Yeah.
her original line of, you know,
She will talk to you.
I won't talk to you again after you're finished with this. I'm never going to have anything to do with you.
Yeah.
Obviously, she didn't stick to that. She's still in my life to some degree. We just don't talk much, and we try very hard to. There are two things we avoid talking about. Anything to do with transgenderism and transsexuality, queer stuff,
Yep.
and anything to do with religion.
Yeah.
We usually stick to food and weather.
Yes.
Those are the safe spots. I call for recipes. I call to ask how the weather is. I call to ask how my brothers are doing. We try to stay off all the
Heavy stuff.
heavy stuff, or else
You've
things
got a
will...
nice fluffy relationship right now.
We try to stay in the safe zone,
Yeah.
and if we do, it's all good. You know, we pretend that I'm not trans, we pretend that she's okay with who I am, and yet we just ignore things and just try to, because I mean, if I'm going to have any type of relationship with my mom, that's how I'm going to have to do it.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I've just sort of accepted that when I call, I'm going to have to call myself my female name. My brothers, because my mom is so adamant that what I'm doing is so wrong,
Yeah.
they pretty much don't want to talk to me. They don't want to talk to me, they don't want to have anything to do with me. So if I end up going to visit, they're going to stay in the room the whole time or go out, stay at a friend's, etc. Alrighty, so if you are trans and you are getting ready to come out, you want to come out, well, I guess this is my advice to you. The best way to do it, to avoid conflict as much as you possibly can, as well as avoid confrontation, give your family/friends a bit of time to think about how they're going to respond, is to write a letter. Include facts. Don't just say, this is who I am, accept it or whatever. Do your research. Look into it a little bit. First of all, make sure that you are trans before you actually go ahead and start telling people that you are. Make sure you know for yourself before you start doing that.
Basically, I think that textual communication is a pretty good way, because over the phone or in person, things can get really heated, and insults can be thrown, whereas over an email, while those things might be thought about,
Or a letter written on paper.
Paper or email, it's just, people are generally more composed, and they will think out their thoughts instead of saying something on a whim, which can be hurtful.
They have more time to think about it. It's less confrontational.
Yeah.
It's less intense.
And they don't feel like they have to accept it right on the spot.
And also you get a chance to think out what you're going to say if you're writing a letter or an email to people. So yeah, the best advice I could probably give you is to do it through a letter or an email, because of those reasons. It's a lot less intense that way, and if people don't want to respond to you, they can just simply not respond. You're not in person, and things are not getting heated, and people are not screaming at each other, possibly throwing things. It can get really messy if you do it in person, depending on who the person is, especially if it's someone you know is probably not going to be 100% okay with it to start with, or at all even. It's best to do it in the least confrontational way possible. So the letter is the way to do it. This works for both family and friends. As for coming out on the job or at school, we will be going into that in a future topic here on FTM Television. But letters also work for that particular thing. But as far as what to put in the letter, we will go into that in the future. Alrighty, so I hope you all are having a good week, and you'll see me again soon. Ciao.
Stay tuned.
Threw me off. Crap.
Satan. We were talking about
Satan.
Satan.